This is Kimberly Page, and the Wrestling Epicenter would like to apologize for the following.
And welcome, everyone, to another edition of Internet Wrestling Radio. I am Patrick Kelly, being joined by Nick Knoll. James Walsh will be joining us in a few seconds. And, Nick, we got a lot to talk about today, what with Raw 1000 and all the updates that came out of that show.
Yep. I'll be honest, my thoughts on Raw 1000, it was everything I thought it was going to be, and it was none of the things it should have been. I mean, it was just another night of people that were there 10 years ago being made to look better than people that are there full-time right now. There were some things, I can understand enjoying briefly, but it's like it seemed like everything dragged on too long. There was almost no wrestling. And, and I told you last week we were probably going to get a three-way at SummerSlam, Punk, Cena, and Big Show.
Yeah, that's pretty much been set up. My overall thoughts on the show, honestly, I agree with a lot of the things that you say, although it didn't bother me quite as much as it did you. I understand, and I think a lot of your complaints are legitimate. Overall, though, I was entertained by the show. It was not a fantastic, one-of-a-kind show. In a lot of ways, and this is how I described it to people, it was a non-clip show clip show.
Well,
and a lot of it was just a nostalgia type of deal, and
But you know what, Pat, we've been on nostalgia for 10 years at this point, or 10-plus years at this point. That's no longer good enough. That's no longer a decent excuse to keep doing it. I mean, you say it was a non-clip show. Quite frankly, a clip show would have been better because, you know what? At least those people wouldn't have looked so old. I mean, I just knew, and one thing that pisses me off is people were talking last night about all the rubs the younger generation got. So, like, people were saying, oh, Damian Sandow.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Damian Sandow got like a huge rub from DX. No, he got beat up by DX and made to look like a total idiot. No one benefited from anything last night. It was just an excuse to make people to make these legends look great again. I'm tired with the legends looking better than the generation of guys that have to carry the show now. One of the main reasons I think it's so dead is that we rely too much on this older generation to still pop the rating every once in a while.
Here's the deal, though, Nick. The older generation is better.
No, it's fucking not. Not in 2012 when they're 50 years old. I'm sorry, but you know what? Using that same argument, then Phil Simms should be starting for the Giants tomorrow. No, he's not. He's 50 fucking years old. He's washed up. He can't throw the ball. I am so sick and tired of the excuse, well, in their day, the older generation was better. No, you know what? That's not the option anymore. That is no longer the option. You can't say, I don't want to hear about Vader in 1992. I don't want to hear about The Undertaker in 94, because those guys are gone. Now we're dealing with old men, and they're not getting the job done, all right?
And here's the thing. Okay, here's where I'll, I don't mean to cut you off, Nick, but here's what I'll say. James, you're probably right in that, I'm going to make a point with this, I swear. In that the older generation is better, but the reason that they're better is because the WWE has spent so much time making their new guys look like shit. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, you put Damian Sandow up against The Undertaker or anything like that, I laugh, because it's like he doesn't stand a chance against The Undertaker. Well, why is that? Because the WWE has done a shitty job of promoting him. Do I think that Damian Sandow is, the be-all, end-all? No, I don't see anything in him, quite honestly, but they haven't done anything to convince me that he is anyway, so I don't give a shit whenever they're on TV because of the way they're presented. Heath Slater, I think he sucks, but the way they presented him, as like they aren't even trying to make me think he's good.
And it's a semantic point to say the older generation is better because they know the secrets of the past generation. Well, you know what? They need to be teaching the younger guys those secrets, not taking away TV time. I'm sorry. You're not going to convince me. And by the way, you said for weeks, oh, the Heath Slater shit is leading somewhere. Where did it lead? What benefit does it have now? Apparently Lita's going to get a title shot, I guess, or something, because that's the only person they built last night.
But Heath Slater might get a title shot. What are you talking about? Because it's like, the way they book things, losers get belts. Look at The Miz. I don't think that dude has won a match since WrestleMania, and he's Intercontinental Champion somehow.
Yeah. It's ridiculous to keep pushing. We are in 2012, ladies and gentlemen. The Monday Night Wars era ended years ago. It's now over a decade done, and we're still trying to get over that generation of stars. Look at the next couple major pay-per-views. It's Triple H versus Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam. The Rock is getting a WWE title shot, I guess because he showed up. That's their reasoning for him getting a title shot. At some point, you got to yank the fucking bandage off and just say, okay, you know what? If you are going to put the older generation up there, then you know what? They got to start taking a sacrifice. You got to have the Undertaker.
The one legend.
Right. I'm tired of seeing these old guys too. So let's just talk about TNA. Hey, do you think Hogan and Sting are going to be on this week?
No, because they're still on the entries from the Aces and Eights. All right, and you know what? I'm not saying Hogan and Sting should be on. But guess what? At least they're trying to make the younger generation look better. Sting has lost to Bobby Roode every time they've wrestled. Hulk Hogan is giving credit to this mysterious new group for putting him through surgery. All right, the world champion is Austin Aries.
You got me there.
So,
I'll give you credit. You got me there, and that story is more compelling because of it. So I'll give you that. Absolutely.
Right, and I'll tell you this, where I'll give them TNA credit for that, and it's not so much using old guys. What I didn't like about Raw 1000 with the nostalgia stuff is that I use the phrase that nothing happened, and what I mean by that is that nothing dramatically interesting happened. DX comes out, they do their thing, and that's it, and nothing payoff to it.
They didn't do anything. There was no younger generation. I mean, if you're going to use a young stable of, we need our spot, should it really be against the Brothers of Disaster or whatever, or should they have converted DX and said, you were the young bastards of your Attitude Era, we're the ones now, we're the hungry ones who want our spot, and then maybe do a 10-man tag or something.
But here's the thing,
or not
James.
even that. I would have just had Lesnar kill them. Like when they do the whole Triple H in-ring thing with Heyman, while that's going on, they should have had Lesnar just beat the crap out of DX. That's what I would have done.
Right, and here's another thing, James. You talked about the Brothers of Destruction. They laid out those guys. I mean, I'm willing to bet, and I feel bad for these guys because I know them because I'm a wrestling fan, and I'm a more diehard wrestling fan, and I watch things like Ohio Valley Wrestling, and I watch Florida Championship Wrestling when I get a chance to see who's coming up. Those guys have talent. Those guys have potential. But you know what? It was like, well, there's Jinder Mahal and a bunch of people. Oh, here's The Undertaker and Kane to beat them up. It seemed like it was not about helping any of those guys. Those guys will not be on Raw next week. They won't be on SmackDown this week, I'm willing to bet. It was another opportunity to remind us The Undertaker and Kane are badasses. They're destructive. They're monsters. Well, you know what? I'm just going to say again, at some point, you have got to start sacrificing the standing of the legends as they get older to let a younger generation make their name off of these guys. And this is going to piss people off, but you know what? People are going to buy that an older Undertaker might not be able to beat a man that is 25 years old, 280 pounds, and looks like he can lift a fucking Toyota with one hand. You know, personally what they should have done, and I know this will get me heat, I think it will even piss off James, is you know what? The Undertaker comes out, he charges, those guys beat him down. Because I'm calling it. This generation of stars will be forgotten entirely. There'll be one or two guys that maybe make an impact, and those are guys like Punk, Daniel Bryan, hopefully. But for the most part, we're going to look back at this generation and be like, God, who was really a part of like the WWE in 2012? Yeah, but like who was
I'll tell you what they should have done. Again, going back to making things dramatically interesting, what they should have done, if Taker's not going to be back until Mania, use this Raw to set up his Mania match. Have whoever his Mania opponent is going to be beat the shit out of him. There you go. And then he comes back in time for Mania, and they do their match. I mean, come on. But no, they just did it for nostalgia pop, and again, nothing happened.
Right, and and last night they had this segment where, and Heath Slater, and look, I'm not a diehard Heath Slater fan. I agree with Patrick. I think he sucks, but I feel bad for the guy because he's trying to make a living in this industry, and they're doing nothing to help him out other than make him, just this idiot that can't beat old men.
I'm a one-man band.
But you know what? He could be
funny.
You know what? He could be a decent lower card heel if you did something with him and have him beat up local jobbers. But no, he's losing to Bob Backlund. He's taking a clothesline from hell from JBL, and I mean it's like he's losing to Sid Vicious. He's losing to Vader, who apparently ate himself and doubled in size. And I'm sorry to all the people that think that was epic or great last night when all those old people came out. But you know what? I'm completely bored by the older generation of wrestlers. Now, James brought up TNA, but you know what? At least with TNA, the legends that they're using for the most part, Sting and Hogan, have a regular role. There's a give and a take with what they're doing in the storylines to a certain extent. There's no give and take in the WWE.
I felt like we shouted James down. James, are you there? I think we scared James away. Oh, dear. But, yeah, and I agree with you. Again, it just goes back to the whole, nostalgia thing over telling stories. And, and again, none of the guys that got beat up last night, me personally, I didn't think they were anything that special. But a lot of that has to do probably with the way the WWE has presented them. They conditioned me not to care about them. The two legends that they did use, in my opinion, effectively, Bret Hart, who was only a guest ring announcer, that's fine. It's like, all right, that's a guest spot for a legend, I think. It's like, if you don't have a story for him or any role for him, let him just be a ring announcer. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have to be upset over Bret not being the Hitman anymore, but trying to be, or anything like that. And it's like, all right, so there was that. And The Rock got beat up by CM Punk, and that was an I really enjoyed the ending to Raw this week, and I'm like, oh, wow, that was actually kind of interesting, and it sets up Punk and Rock for the future. That's interesting. That gives us something to follow. But everybody else, especially the DX thing, I mean, what was the point of that? Outside of just the nostalgia pop.
Pure nostalgia. That's it. And you know what?
That's not a good enough reason anymore. You can't use that as an excuse. It's like the people. It's like a little boy saying, "Well, why'd you do that?" Because I felt like it. It's not. It doesn't work. And it was one thing to be trying to do nostalgia in 2005, but for all intents and purposes, we're still living on nostalgia. It's been nothing but nostalgia from the WWE for the most part. There is no mid-card to speak of. There's no tag team title to speak of. There's no lower card to speak of. I would actually love to play a game, and that's, let's show people just guys that are on the WWE roster and see if they recognize them. And I'm talking about us and how long it would take us to recognize some of these guys that draw a paycheck in the WWE, actually do record matches for shit like Superstars and NXT, and see how many we could actually recognize in a decent amount of time. And you know what? There was a time, and it wasn't really all that long ago, for many, many years, where I could recognize almost everyone working on the WWE roster.
Do you think that we got spoiled, though? I mean, when you think about it,
I don't think we got spoiled to ask for a mid card.
Hold on. Let me finish what I'm saying. In the 80s, we had the Hogans and the Savages and the Flairs and all those guys that really took wrestling from what it once was and transformed it into this in your living room form of entertainment, as opposed to that your local county fair type of entertainment. And in the 90s, we got lucky with guys like Austin, Undertaker, and Edge. I will even throw Goldberg in there, and Sting. These other guys who just took it and continued the tradition of having this amazing, and yes, I'm throwing Edge in that mix because I think he deserves it, having this amazing understanding of what wrestling is and this performing arts and all that goes along with it. And then you think about the 2000s, and who do we get? Brock Lesnar? Well, I personally think he sucks. I'm sorry. I've always thought that. I've always said that. That's not a new opinion. There's a lot of guys that they've pushed in the new generation that, frankly, suck. And we're talking about guys like CM Punk. He's amazing. I was completely wrong about him. He's amazing. He's great. Cena, you know what? For all the crap he gets, most of it deserved, he does go out there and tries, even if he's not my type of performer anymore, or ever was, really. But you got to really just think, how lucky were we to have a generation that produced people and large characters like I said, the Hogan, Flairs, and Savages, like the Edges, Austins, and Stings, to have this generation, these generations where we had these great talents, and now we're kind of in a lull. And to be fair, we've been in a lull for over a decade.
Well, I said it's not a lull, ladies and gentlemen. It is the status quo. And, James, I'm going to actually disagree with you. Despite the age-old legend that pro wrestling before the 80s was A-market entertainment, you had guys like Bruno Sammartino selling out Madison Square Garden. You had the Briscoe brothers selling out the Omni. So, I mean, wrestling had been to that level beforehand. And to say we were spoiled, no, I'm going to say it's not that we were spoiled. It's that now we have people that don't understand how to book wrestling. And I'm going to ask you, James, and I'm going to ask everyone seriously, do you really think Steve Austin could get over in this modern company? Let's say Steve Austin doesn't exist in 1996, but the WWE continues to exist one way or another. And instead, Steve Austin is a much younger man, and he makes his WWE debut in this modern era. A lot of what allowed Steve Austin to become Steve Austin was they realized, okay, this ringmaster gimmick isn't working. He has this idea. Let's let him run with it. I don't see something like that happening in the modern-day WWE.
Well, the one guy was CM Punk, and that created the hottest storyline they'd had in a long time, and B, they eventually just dropped that too, so there you go.
Right. Well, also, I mean, I hate to say this, let's look at the modern-day WWE, and my issue, there are a lot of issues I have. One of my two biggest issues are they pick a chosen few as main eventers. Example, Alberto Del Rio. They decided long before he even wrestled his first match he was going to be world champion. And they keep pushing him as a quote-unquote main eventer, despite the fact that he just isn't good enough to be at that level, and he may never be. They're pushing him like that. So they've locked Alberto Del Rio in there. My other issue is, you know what, James, part of what allowed those great generations of wrestlers to thrive that you were speaking about was they could work their way up. Example, Edge. Edge starts as a tag team wrestler predominantly, gets over with the crowd with Christian. People love him. People enjoy it. And he learns a lot of things that will carry him years later. He goes single, and he becomes the Intercontinental Champion numerous times and continues to improve and improve and improve. And then he was ready to be world champion when they did the angle at New Year's Revolution or Resolution or whatever it was called. And you know what? He was ready. There isn't that today with the WWE. There isn't a good mid-card. I mean, their basic idea of a mid-card is, okay, Edge, Miz, Christian, go out there. Miz is winning the Intercontinental Championship. There has to be more than just a main event. They concentrate on the main eventers, and a lot of times, and especially last night, it feels like time that could have been spent building up a mid-card is given to the quote-unquote legends. You know what you could have done last night with Heath Slater? And again, I don't think Heath Slater is a great talent, but he keeps disrespecting all these legends. How about you send out someone like from like developmental or someone who has ties to these legends? Say, hey, I'm not going to let you say that about so and so, and that leads to a feud between these two guys, and you can do a story with that. Instead, it's like, hey, yeah, it will get people to cheer a lot. It's like we have JBL hit the clothesline from hell, and then Ron Simmons says, "Get him again."
Actually, I think what Nick, what you're saying basically is that the system that was used to create a lot of these legends has now been completely discarded.
Exactly. And once upon a time, you know what? The legends, if they were used to get that next generation over. There were guys like Pedro Morales who went down the card and helped to work with the younger generation. You know, even he would have like specially isolated incidents where Bruno would come out of the announce booth and work with Randy Savage. Well, you know what?
Yeah, and he'd win. So you say this, but he'd come and he'd win.
But he'd win by countout. They wouldn't do a thing like they did a couple of years ago, where with like Bret Hart and The Miz, where Bruno would beat Savage for the IC title, so they could have a feel-good moment where Bruno holds up the IC title just to vacate it the next day. You know?
It's a tough situation because at the same rate, I also hated what they used to do, and what they used to do was shit all over the legends, and I really do believe that. And that was part of the, you know, knocking the older guys because they were the young guy company. But I remember distinctly that, you know, they used to beat a lot of guys that were older and really treat them like shit. You know, thinking back to Rob Conway, when Rob Conway used to beat guys. And it's like,
well, hold it.
Rob Conway, guys?
Stop, James. Rob Conway wasn't beating the legends. I remember the only thing I remember from that angle was he got beat up by all the legends at Raw Homecoming, where Dusty Rhodes was like, "How dare you talk ill to Fabulous Moolah? How dare you crack wise with Dusty Rhodes?" And then the only thing that people really popped for was Kevin Von Erich giving him the Von Erich claw.
Yeah.
Which, I'm sorry, James, they did not shit on the legends there. The legends got over. And that led to Hacksaw Jim Duggan getting hired again for a comedy tag team with Eugene. You're not going to convince me the legends got shit on there.
They really did. I'm sorry, Nick, I do disagree with you there. Now, the thing is... How did the legends get shit on in that? Because they lost to a younger guy? Nick, I completely agree with you. We need to be building the new generation. The legends always have their place to do spots. I think last night might have been a little bit too much, but based on the build-up to it, are you really surprised?
Well, no, I wasn't surprised at all. I knew that was coming.
But you know what, James? Just because you're not surprised doesn't mean you don't have the right to criticize. You know what? This might piss people off, but you know what? Everyone knew Barack Obama was going to install Obamacare when he took office. Doesn't mean people that disagree with it should just shut up and not say anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, look who's starting the political talk now. Well,
well, look, I don't want to go in that direction, but I'm just
I'm not going in that direction. No, I frankly, I've said so much about it that I'm tired of talking about it. But look, I mean, I'm going to be blunt, guys. I didn't get back last night until literally on the East Coast time 11, so I didn't actually see it. I've watched part of it today that I downloaded and kind of skimmed through. I'm going to watch the whole thing tonight and probably fall asleep watching it. From what I saw of it, there were some cool things that happened. I mean, but the fact is, you're right. We should be building generation of today, and I posted something on Facebook last night when I was kind of skimming through it in kind of half-heartedly because I was half awake at the time. Wrestling fans in general just have to chill the fuck out. And what I mean by that is everybody's going to sit here and bitch and moan so much about John Cena and the fact that he can't work and all this other stuff. And it's just time to let go of that. Just relax. In the end, wrestling is a bunch of guys who pull their socks up and fake fight. We need to accept that. I accept it. I respect the hell out of these guys. Don't get me wrong. I'm not at all insulting them. But to some degree, if we're going to be arguing about that, you know, a lot of us will sit there and poke fun at the people going to the San Diego Comic-Con and say, "Oh, those Trekkie geeks" and things like that, because they speak those languages and things like that Trekkie language.
But the only one that's ever insulted Comic-Con on this show is you. When you actually, and I remember the incident because Eric was involved, and and it was something like Eric mentioned that TNA was doing something at Comic-Con, and you said something like, "Yeah, but who really goes there other than the Star Trek nerds?" I don't say insult the Comic-Con people. I like the shit that comes out of Comic-Con. Patrick did a video talking about all the things he heard about from Comic-Con that he's excited about. And you're the guy talking about how...
To be honest with you, I almost went this year, so what's... But we'll sit there and we'll make fun of these. What I'm trying to say is we make fun of the Star Trek nerds, and my wife is one, so I can do that.
No, truthfully, wrestling nerds are way worse than Star Trek nerds.
We are worse.
This is coming from coming from people, from someone who's been around both. Trust me, Star Trek fans are delightful compared to some wrestling fans. Just throwing that out there. Right, but
we are belligerent. We are angry. We are entirely too critical. It's just like, look, last night's show was a nostalgia show, and I think we're all a little bit disappointed that it was because we should have seen some more things to happen to build new stars. But honestly, like I said, with the build-up, it was going to be a nostalgia show. This reminds me in a lot of ways of, I don't know if anybody remembers this, in 2000 WCW, there was an unopposed...
The Legend show?
No, I was going to say it was actually the unopposed Nitro. They went, WWE was second fiddle to the Dog show or whatever the hell it was, and it was the Valentine's Day edition. And everybody's like, okay, this is their big chance. And Vince Russo, when he was booking, had this whole big circus act that was going to happen, but Russo was out of power about a month before then. And what was the main event of that show? Hogan against Flair. And people were like, you blew your biggest opportunity that you have this year on a match that we've seen 100 times. And that's what they did. And you can't deny it because that was the truth. And you know what? I mean, this is kind of what happened last night. It was supposed to be the biggest show of the year for Raw, and it just it felt kind of like a reunion of the stars, which if it was billed as such, that's fine, but they do so damn many of them now that it doesn't matter. Like when Slick came out, it's like, well, we just saw him a few years ago, so it's not like the hugest deal in the world. And, you know, when so many of these guys come out, like Nick ranted about a month ago, oh, here comes Roddy Piper again, ha, ha, ha. And it's like, well, yeah, but he's there every other week because you're always doing some kind of legend angle. So it's I don't know. To me, it just didn't make... I haven't seen the show yet, but to me it didn't make a huge amount of sense. I'm still perplexed why Charlie Sheen was on my TV with their wrestling show, but there you go.
Well, he's going to be feuding with Daniel Bryan, which I'll be honest, I have no interest in seeing that.
What's that again?
He's going to be feuding with Daniel Bryan, apparently, which I got to be honest, I have no interest in seeing that.
I don't want to see him wrestle. He's 47 and... I'm pretty sure that if you hit him hard, some cocaine will fall out of his pores.
Probably, but the things from the Raw 1000 show that I did like, I talked about the ending. I did like the ending with Punk beating up The Rock. I thought that was a good image to go out on, and it builds into next week's show. So that was something. And I did like the Triple H, Paul Heyman segment, which set up the match between Lesnar and Triple H at SummerSlam, because I just thought Heyman should get mic time every week. He's just that good.
Yeah, which I actually did like parts of this. I liked parts of it, and it was a pretty good segment. But I do want to just point one thing out. Stephanie McMahon comes out, and her whole issue with Heyman is, don't you ever talk about my kids. 30 seconds later, she talks about Paul Heyman's kids.
No, she's a bitch. Which, by the way, I never realized how tall she is.
Well, sorry, say again. What are you saying?
Paul Heyman, I never realized how fucking tall Stephanie was.
I don't think it's just she's
Christ, she was like Snoo.
I honestly think it's not that Stephanie's tall. I think it's that Heyman's that short.
Maybe.
It's possible. I mean, I knew this is true. I figured out how tall she, and this is going to sound just so bad. I figured out how tall she was when they started a SmackDown once at her feet when she was bending over when she was the general manager, and they like zeroed in on her ass, and like it took them like 10 minutes to get up to her ass.
I don't remember that.
Somebody used to have it as their avatar on our forums, and it just felt like...
I don't know why that's funny. I don't know why that's funny.
I mean, it was clearly that they were going to do that, but it just seemed like to take forever. It was like... maybe the suspense was killing me. I don't know, but it just felt like it was taking a long time to get there.
Which, by the way, speaking of general managers, what are your guys' thoughts on AJ being made the general manager of Raw?
I'll say it again. I don't give a fuck who's in charge of the show. It doesn't matter to me. I would rather they stick AJ in the women's division, where, you know, she's the only legit female character they have. So why not use her to help build that division and make the women's title mean something? But it's just another boss angle. I don't care.
I don't care. I'm going to make this plain. I love crazy chicks because, honestly, they're just the best. She reminds me way too much of my first girlfriend in every avenue possible. I'm talking, holy shit, just insanity. Even the looks were somewhat similar, and it's like, whoa, you know, this might hit a little bit too close for me to actually enjoy. But
all right, well, my thoughts just are kind of similar to Patrick's, where it's like, if we're going to have a boss and a boss running the show, I'd be fine with that, but stop making it a storyline where like the guy has such a huge influence week to week, and it's like, oh, I'm a good guy, or no, I'm a bad guy. And I also agree, it's like they have one female character that's interesting, and she's not in the women's division.
How is she as a wrestler? I've only seen like bits and pieces of her work. She seems okay, at least.
Well, from what I understand, when, it was years ago that I read this, it was like a review of a match she had before she got signed, and she was still pretty green, but the general consensus among the guy that was writing it was, but, you know, she's, for someone that only has had, like, a handful of matches, really, she's really good. I can understand why she got signed so quickly to the WWE, so I hear she's pretty good. And, I mean, I'll say this, if she could do more than slap, arm drag, drop kick, shake your ass, she's got the majority of the Divas beat.
I mean, she can't be any worse than Kelly Kelly. I mean, if she's at least on par in ring with Kelly Kelly, then she should get the fucking belt. Because at least she has a character.
Yeah. And also, is it just me, and this is going to sound really weird, does it seem like they're trying to turn her heel? Because, to be perfectly honest, with the shit they pulled last night, my immediate reaction was, well, damn, she's a bit of a bitch leaving a guy at the altar because she took a job.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. There's no way to explain it. It's just weird. But what I would prefer they would do with the general manager thing, just not have one. Just have the board of directors run the show. We never see them, and that's it. There you go. I mean, we don't need to have all these power struggle angles, and which I've said a million times, the most overused, overplayed, boring piece of wrestling storytelling that's out there right now. Because everybody does it. There's a reason why I hated TNA in 2011, because it was the Immortal storyline. I didn't give a shit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, you know, just we've seen a real difference in the storytelling in 2012 in TNA because we've gotten away from a power struggle. You do have, like, you know, a GM, but it's like, okay, he's actually playing an authority figure. There's no angle where Bobby Roode's wrestling to take control of the company.
And Hogan being in charge, well, I'll give them credit. Hogan being in charge as an on-screen authority figure actually changed the show. It led to the creation of Open Fight Night. It led to the gut check challenges. Like, he actually changed things. It wasn't just, I'm just going to keep doing the same thing that everybody else did, but
right. And it
led people that are different.
Right. It kind of led to this element of, now they've gotten away from it lately, but they had the TV title centered a little bit more often. They had, you know, you have situations where at the Open Fight Night, you know, he says, well, you know what, if you're a champion, you're going to have to defend your belt, and you might have to defend your belt on Open Fight Night. So there was a change, and to be honest, you know, at least, and I'll say this again, you know, yeah, he's a general manager, but at least there's no, like, on-screen element of it, like, where it's clear that he wants guys to follow the rules, but he's also not like booking like impossible situations because he's a good guy. It's not like he's saying to people, well, okay, Bobby Roode, this time to make sure you don't cheat, I'm going to do this, this, and this. He's saying, okay, Bobby Roode, here's your next challenger. It's Austin Aries.
There you go.
Which, by the way, I've got to go to work, so I'm going to call it a night, everyone.
All right. Well, thank you, Nick. Thank you for joining us. And James, are you still here? James? I'll take that as a no. Okay, so I'm all by myself here, so I might as well just wrap things up now. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us, and we promise to have more shows and interviews for you in the future. Until then, I'm Patrick Kelly on behalf of everyone at WrestlingEpicenter.com saying good night, everybody.